We finally got what everyone's been asking for. A real report from someone who was actually inside Team USA women's training camp watching Caitlin Clark, Paige Buchers, and the rest of the pool go at it. Not a fan thread. Not a clipped-up highlight out of context. An actual basketball journalist sitting baseline and taking notes. If you missed it, the Indy Stars Fever Insider podcast had a really important episode breaking down those scrimmages. Chloe Peterson and Brian Henshin were joined by Annie Costabile from the Chicago Sun-Times, one of the few reporters allowed into practices in Durham, North Carolina. And what Annie saw and what she didn't see tells a very different story than the one that's been bouncing around social media. The noise started as soon as USA Basketball posted that now infamous clip, Paige Buchers blocking Caitlin Clark's shot at camp. The replies were instant. Paige cooked her. Caitlin's overrated. Jackie Young said Paige was the best young guard there. Within hours, you had a full-blown Caitlin versus Paige narrative being built off maybe 20 seconds of footage. What almost nobody outside that gym is talking about is context. Let's start with the most basic piece. Conditioning. Sue Bird, who was on the call for the camp and knows a thing or two about what it takes to be a Team USA point guard, said out loud, Caitlin Clark is healthy, but she's not 100%. That's not a contradiction. That's the reality of coming back from an injury and months away from live game reps. Clark has essentially been dealing with lower body issues for the better part of a year. Late last WNBA season with Indiana, she gutted through ankle problems and muscle soreness because the Fever needed her on the floor and she refused to sit down. When the season finally ended, she didn't jump straight into pickup runs. She went into rehab. Strength work, mobility, getting her body right. That's what players mean when they say, I feel good, but I'm not in game shape yet. It's one thing to be cleared by the medical staff. It's another to be back at the speed you need to read, react, and make plays against the best players in the world. Now drop that version of Caitlin Clark into a 3-day Team USA camp, where practices are explicitly designed to push everyone to the edge. According to Annie Costabile, media got about 20 minutes at the end of day 1 and day 2. That's all. 20 minutes of a much longer practice. The cool-down phases, essentially, to watch the most competitive women in the sport, most of whom are tired, some of whom are getting their own legs back, all of whom are trying to prove something. In that tiny window, Paige Buchers looks sharper. And honestly, she should. Paige has been healthy. She's been playing. She's been in rhythm at UConn, and then in pro-level runs since the college season ended. If Buchers didn't look better than a rusty Clark in that kind of setting, that would be the real story. That would be a red flag about where Paige is in her progression. That's not disrespect to Caitlin. That's simply how basketball works. If you miss meaningful time, it takes a while to shake the rust. Timing, conditioning, reaction speed, none of that instantly comes back just because your ankle feels better. Clark is going to go through multiple Team USA camps before the next major tournament. She'll play in exhibition games in March. By the time the WNBA season starts, she'll have dozens of practices and scrimmages under her belt. That's when a true evaluation of her form, her defense, her chemistry with other stars actually means something. Right now, this is the very beginning of the process. That brings us to Jackie Young's comment, which set off another round of hot takes. After one of the sessions, Young was asked about the younger group. She called Paige Buchers the best young player in camp. That got screenshotted and clipped and turned into a Jackie takes Paige over Caitlin storyline. Again, slow down and think about how players talk. Guards hype guards. Bigs hype bigs. It's always been that way. Young is a perimeter player. Buchers is a perimeter player. She saw Paige hit shots, defend, run the floor, and she gave her props. That's it. There's no draft room vote attached to that quote. There's no secret ballot where she ranked every guard 1 through 10. And even if you want to read into it, look at Jackie Young's own development curve before you panic about where Clark or Buchers stand. At 22, Young averaged about 6 points per game in the WNBA. At 23, she bumped that up to around 11. At 24, she was at 12. She didn't become the Jackie Young who just dropped 32 in a WNBA Finals game and became a go-to scorer for the Las Vegas Aces until she was 25 and 26 years old. Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers are 23. They are already performing at a much higher level in a much bigger spotlight than Jackie was at the same age. That's not a knock on Young, who has blossomed into one of the best two-way guards on the planet. It's perspective. Development isn't linear. Players hit their prime at different times. The fact that Caitlin and Paige are even in this conversation this early says more about their talent level than any 3-day camp snapshot. All right, so what did Annie Costabile actually say about Caitlin's game at camp? She said Clark looks healthy. In terms of movement, she's not favoring anything. She's cutting, planting, getting to her spots. The shot, the one everyone knows her for, is there. Her speed is coming back. Her passing, Annie said, was still Caitlin's most impressive quality. The timing, the angles, the ability to see plays a beat earlier than everyone else. What she also said was that you can see rust. You can tell she hasn't played in high-level games in months. That's normal. Conditioning under those circumstances is not going to be the same as someone who just played a full college season or full WNBA slate. The most important piece of Costabile's reporting, though, had nothing to do with who hit more shots or who got more steals in that 20-minute media viewing period. She said the Caitlin versus Paige storyline is not real inside that gym. USA basketball staff, Kara Lawson and the rest of the coaches, are not treating this camp as an audition where only one of them can win a spot and the other gets sent home. They aren't looking at Bueckers and Clark and saying, pick one. What they're interested in is how they play together. That is a huge distinction from what Annie saw and heard. The coaches are using these reps to test combinations. Caitlin and Paige in the backcourt at the same time, maybe with Jackie Young playing the three. Different lineups, different actions. They're not trying to manufacture a rivalry. They're trying to build a blueprint. Think about what that means for where Team USA thinks its future lies at the guard spot. Lawson and her staff are effectively assuming both Clark and Bueckers are going to be part of the program long term. They want to know, can they share the floor? How do they handle switches? Who brings the ball up? How do they space out when they're both on the wings? Does Paige feel more comfortable as a secondary playmaker while Caitlin initiates? Or does it work better in certain lineups to flip that? Those are the questions that matter in an international setting. And here's where it's important to understand how Team USA actually uses its rotations in World Cups and Olympics. This is not the NBA, where if you're a starter, it usually means you're playing 30-plus minutes a night, and the bench guys get the scraps. On these rosters, minutes are fluid. You can start and sit after 6 minutes, then not come back until the third quarter. You can come off the bench and, if the matchup is right, play 25 minutes because your skill set fits what's needed that day. Everyone on a Team USA roster is a star somewhere. The staff's job is to find duos and trios that work against different types of opponents. Physical teams switch every team's zones, slower half-court teams. Who starts is honestly way less important than who can coexist and punish coverages when it matters. From that perspective, arguing on Twitter about whether Caitlin or Paige should start is almost missing the point. The real question for American fans should be, can they be lethal together? On paper, the answer is yes. Their games complement each other in obvious ways. Bueckers is more plug and play. She can operate on or off the ball, thrive in different offenses, and slide between the 1 and the 2. She cuts well, relocates, and is comfortable taking what the defense gives her. Clark, on the other hand, is a classic engine. She wants the ball in her hands, wants to orchestrate, wants to bend defenses out of shape with her shooting range and vision. Put them side by side, and you've got two guards who can both handle, both shoot at all three levels, both make advanced reads. If a defense traps Caitlin, she can reverse the Paige and immediately become a decoy off a flare screen. If Paige draws help on a drive, Caitlin is spotting up 27 feet away, forcing a defender to make an impossible choice. And don't sleep on their defensive potential in that pairing. Neither is a finished product on that end. Analysts have fairly pointed out that Clark needs to improve her lateral quickness, awareness off the ball, and physical strength to deal with pro guards. Paige, coming off serious injuries, is still fine-tuning her own defensive timing. But in a system with elite bigs behind them and the ability to hide matchups when needed, both are smart enough and competitive enough to be solid team defenders. Now add Jackie Young to that mix, based on what she's done in Las Vegas. Huge playoff scoring runs, tough defense, secondary playmaking. Young is realistically the only WNBA guard you can confidently argue is ahead of both Clark and Buchers right now. Not Sabrina Ionescu, not Jewel Lloyd, not Kelsey Plum. As great as they all are, Jackie's combination of size, strength, efficiency, and experience on a championship team gives her a slight edge. Imagine a 3-guard rotation of Young, Buchers, and Clark for Team USA. Any two of them on the floor at the same time is a nightmare to guard. All three together in certain small ball looks would be almost unfair. That's what the coaching staff is experimenting with. These camps are about data collection. Which trios talk the most on defense? Who naturally falls into which role without being told? What happens when you put Caitlin and Paige in staggered pick and rolls? How they read each other's movements in early offense. To circle back to where we started, Annie Costable's main takeaway was not Paige dominated Caitlin or Caitlin struggled against Paige. Her main takeaway was that Caitlin Clark looks healthy. Her tools are intact. She's understandably rusty, and USA Basketball is thinking big picture. They're not building a roster around this week. They're building a guard core for the next decade. At 23 and 24 years old, Clark and Buchers are already ahead of where most all WNBA guards were at that age. Jackie Young herself is proof that it can take a few years in the league before your game fully blossoms. The fact that Caitlin and Paige are even being debated in this way right now says they're on an elite trajectory. So if you're a WNBA fan, a Fever fan, a UConn fan, or just someone who wants Team USA to keep stacking gold medals, the real story out of this camp is encouraging. Caitlin Clark's shot is still there. Her passing is still special. Her body looks right again. Paige Buchers is healthy and sharp. Jackie Young continues to prove she belongs in every discussion about the best guards in the world. And USA Basketball is spending its limited camp time figuring out how to get all of them on the floor together, not pitting them against each other in some one-spot-only competition. Everything else, the 20-second clips, the overreactions, the who-look-better arguments, is noise. The guard rotation for Team USA's future is not going to be Caitlin versus Paige. It's going to be Caitlin and Paige with Jackie Young and others around them. These January practices are just the first sketches of what that could look like when everyone is healthy, conditioned, and fully locked in. When that happens, when Clark and Buchers are both at full speed and fully integrated into the system, that's when Team USA is going to be truly terrifying. If you care about the WNBA and women's basketball at the highest level, that's the vision to keep your eyes on, not who won a random possession in a 20-minute media viewing window in Durham.